In 1965, a record home attendance of 51,370 saw St Kilda play Collingwood in the opening round at Moorabbin. They hung from the rafters, they squeezed into every vantage point. They won by a kick.
We didn't win many games, but we had some fun.
There's a booming torpedo kick from Ferry to full forward. Goal! What a goal! Can he find him?
Well, the tension's on here at Moorabbin, and Lockett's led. There's the pass on the way, and Lockett has marked directly in front. Now, Pete, you've kicked 100 goals yourself. Call this 100th goal in league football of Tony Lockett's if he kicks it.
Well, Tony Lockett coming in for goal number 100. He'll never forget it. It's a goal! A great effort by the young champ. A beautiful kick, and there the Saints players protecting Tony Lockett, and the crowd are coming on in their hundreds and thousands. And I knew the police had no hope, Ken.
Morris kicks long to half forward. Loewe. Causing major problems. Here's another one. This will be Winmar. The Saints are alight.
So we're set to go. St Kilda kicking to the right. They've got two of their champions back. And the Crows to the left. Tregenza are going to touch Harvey, who's been a big star this year. Goes towards full forward Lockett. What a dream start. Couldn't have asked for more than that, Don.
And you can listen to that crowd. I think the crowd tells the story, doesn't it?
Special place in my heart, I suppose, Moorabbin, especially, them last quarters when the game's close and all the supporters and that start ranting and raving and cheering and, it nearly brings the roof down. There's just some sort of feeling that you get when you're at Moorabbin that you don't get when you're at any other ground.
Well, Jen, I think I can speak on behalf of all visiting players to Moorabbin that say farewell and good riddance to those cold showers in the club rooms after the 6-inch mud cakes you used to get on yourself in the middle.
Cold showers?
Well, that was being polite. They were a trickle of water.
It is time now on our broadcast this week to catch up with one of the all-time greats of the club. 321 games, 594 goals. Club captain St Kilda into a grand final in 1997. Best and fairest winner in 1990. All-Australian, State of Origin rep as well. All of those topics particularly current in terms of the landscape around football at the moment, with the other return of the State of Origin next week, but also the pre-season on our doorsteps, and the pre-season competition has changed dramatically. We know now it's obviously more practice match based, but I think we all remember the halcyon days of 1996 at Waverley Park. But I speak of Stewart Loewe, and Stewart, thank you very much for joining us.
No, my pleasure, boys. Good to be here.
Now, I apologise for asking a difficult one first up, and I understand that it's obviously a particularly hard topic. We were broadcasting a show not long after the passing of Danny Frawley, and we all had our chances to sort of share our thoughts and pay our respects and pay our tributes. First of all, well done for the courage you and Robert Harvey and co showed at the funeral and also at the Best and Fairest. But I guess a lasting memory that has stayed with you over these coming months when reflecting on Danny particularly.
Oh, look, it's probably a poignant question. As there has been a little bit of time that's gone by. I got asked up by Tony Brown to address the boys up at Ballarat last Thursday night around the campfire and just talk a little bit about the great man and his role at the footy club when I was there and his legacy he left and what he sort of meant to myself and certainly his teammates back then as both a teammate and skipper. I took time to go to the accident site and yeah, it was something that I'd been putting off, but it was the right time and look, we're never going to forget him. He was larger than life. He was one of my best mates. Footy transcends lots of parts of your life, and I love every moment I had playing with him on the field. He was fearless. He was courageous. He was funny. He knew when to lighten the mood. He knew when to put the foot down and get the boys G'd up. He was just an unbelievable athlete that probably people forgot in his later life in what he was doing on the bounce and all the mucking around and the weight he put on, which he hated. But he was just a fierce and awesome competitor and athlete. Used to be top three in every endurance run we used to do. Was such a young leader. He was captain of the footy club at 23 and never really looked back. And until the day he retired, he was captain, and there was no better person that I could run out in the field with. We'll never replace him, and we'll never forget him. And his legacy is large, and it's just left a huge hole in my heart and a huge hole around the footy club and around my life. But he's got three beautiful daughters and an amazing wife that I know will carry on his legacy. And we'll all try our best. The guys that played with him, and I know the guys now representing the club, will try their best to capture that legacy flag that we're all chasing back then, and hopefully it's not too far away.
Stewie, Nick Splitter here. Thanks for coming on the show, mate. Just want to reiterate what Darren said earlier, and thank you for your kind words for Sparta and everything you did throughout that period. I think a lot of Saints fans as well were struggling through that period. But to lighten the mood a little bit, you probably would have had some decent battles with him on the training track, especially if Plugger was out or injured or suspended or whatever. He missed a few games, the big fella did. But did you ever cop a spray from him in the goal square on the training track, or did he get in your ear a bit and chirp at training? We had a couple of years when Kenny was coaching, where Hutto would take Jamie Shanahan, myself, Plugger and Spud, the four of us, and we do probably 20 minutes of training sort of one-on-one with each other, and we'd rotate around. Generally I'd get Shanners, but quite often we'd mix it around, and I can pinpoint that as the real defining turning point in my career. Both amazing backmen in their own rights, and if you had to be on your game, and it was on. It was 110%. It was match day stuff, and Spo hated you taking one or getting one or pushing him off, and he'd be there with an elbow in the guts. You knew it. So those memories of those battles were phenomenal. I actually never stood him in a pracky game. We used to always be pitted against each other on any sort of camps that we did. He'd always be on another team, and he'd be inevitably a leader of his team, and I'd be one of the leaders in one of the other teams, and we'd battle out. We'd really battle it out. There's only one time up at Puckapunyal where we were both sort of semi-injured, and we were put in the one team together, and we had this orienteering run on the last day, and it was supposed to take half a day, and we had about 5 minutes to get our team together, and Spud and I sort of put our heads together, and we tore the map into fours, and we sent two blokes out to each sort of corner of the grid, and we were back within about 2 hours. We got every mark clipped on our sheet, and the coaches and the guys looking after it up at Puckapunyal sort of scratched their heads and said, "Well, boys, the bar's yours." So as soon as there was an incentive for a bit of a beer and
to sort of not break the rules, but just put our heads together and come up with a plan. He certainly did, and I wish I could say I was the instigator of it. I might have had a little bit of a say in it, but it was mainly the big fella's idea. But no, he was awesome. As I said, words can't describe what he was as a player. He just gave his all, and as I said to the boys the other night, if you can rest your head on your pillow at your end of the game, or at the end of the year, or at the end of your career, to say that you've got everything in your body, then you've done yourself proud, your family proud, and your club proud. And I know that's one thing that he prided himself on.
G'day, Buck. It's great to have you on. Thanks for joining us. Now, thinking of Plugger and when he moved on at the end of 1994, obviously you missed a fair bit of 94, but the change from there on, from 95 onwards, we obviously needed to find some goals from somewhere. We found that you yourself kicked 160 plus over the next 2 years, but just the change from having him Plugger there to not having him there, just how did you have to change your game? How did everyone have to restructure, and what was the biggest difference that you found?
Oh, look, there's no doubt. Look, I rate Plugger with halves as the best players I've ever played with. Phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And you'd have him in your side. If we could have retained him, we would have had him. But we were fortunate enough to get some terrific kids through that trade with Plugger going up to Sydney. And it was probably a great opportunity for me to probably play a little bit deeper, which I played the majority of my football previous to that, obviously up forward. Up a little higher at centre forward. So we just tweaked a few things around, and look, I really enjoyed playing a little bit deeper. We then were fortunate enough to get Jason Heatley from West Coast, who was sensational for 2 or 3 years for us, and I think kicked 60 or 70 goals in 97. He provided a real good focal point up there. But look, we would have loved to have had him there. We had to adjust slightly. We probably having me down deeper enabled us to still have a real get out and a go to. We were all shattered when he left, and knew that we all had to dig deep and work a little bit harder to come up with the wins.
Nearly kicked a ton, obviously, in 96, 90 goals that you probably would have had. We have snuck into the finals, but I know we will get on to Moorabbin in a moment. But just on, obviously, that particular the period, and you were a particularly prolific State of Origin player, as was Robert Harvey, who won 3 E.J. Whitten medals. You obviously picked up one of those and played state footy for probably a decade. And we spoke about the pre-season competition where 96 there were 70,000 people at a grand final. A couple of years later when you played North, there was about the same. In between, other grand finals were drawing that as well. Essendon, Richmond in 93, for example. Could you foreshadow or foresee at that point in time that, say, 20 years down the track, there'd be no State of Origin and there'd be no pre-season competition?
Yeah, I must admit, when we started, we were bussed all around the state playing sort of these quasi practice games that didn't really mean much. That were you were hard to get motivated for on grounds all around the countryside. Inevitably, in the middle of the day, at 35 degrees on a rock hard track. The pre-season comp was great. We certainly embraced it. My mentality going into every pre-season was to be the fittest I could be coming back after Christmas, and then as fit as I could be round one as the first practice game, and just try to hang on. In hindsight, maybe I probably could have done things a little bit differently, but that was always my ethos, was just to be as fit as I could. So I relished all those pre-season games. State footy for us in the late 80s and the early 90s was as good as finals. We hadn't played that many finals, so to be involved with the likes of Gary Ablett and Greg Williams and the absolute champions of the game, to run around in their company was just enormous for our growth. tell the story of one of my first training sessions at the MCG, and we were just doing simple lane work, and Billy Goggins was the coach, and it was all fairly relaxed, and I was nervous as hell, and sort of just doing some simple lane work, sort of working at maybe 3/4 pace, and I'd sort of marked the footy and just kicked one to Diesel Williams and just missed him by sort of by maybe half a metre. He gave me the biggest spray, and I must admit, I don't think I missed a kick. Not that I was the greatest kick, but I did not miss a kick at state training, or probably for the rest of that year. It just gave me an insight as to why these guys were so good, and the attention to detail. So I loved it. I loved EJ. Again, Spud was instrumental in playing a lot, as Harves and Berkey. Were really lucky and fortunate enough to be selected in about a dozen games through that era, and played in some massive games, and there was that real rivalry. It was tough trying to come up for 3 games in a week. There's no doubt about that. And as the years went on, I unfortunately had to pull out on a couple, but I certainly put my hand up and loved and cherished every one I played in.
Stewie, around that period, around the kind of early, mid to late 90s, really, that the league had a few new clubs come in. There was a lot more money being thrown around at players, and there are obviously some fairly well-told stories about St Kilda players particularly being targeted by some of those clubs, and obviously Plugger left, yourself and Harves and Berkey and you guys stayed. Was there any real threat of you guys leaving?
I know Harves and I were targeted by Fremantle. I probably the year they or the second year they were about, they flew me over, which was common knowledge, and I had a look at the facilities and met a few of the players, and had a couple of nights with Neil Danaher, who was the assistant coach at the time, and came back and just thought to myself, I'm not comfortable about sort of moving interstate from family, and I'd sort of without telling anyone made my mind up that I was going to stay. Ironically, that Saturday I was putting a bet on down at the Sandringham TAB, and Noel Judkins, who was then recruiting manager for Essendon, sort of was in there at the same time, and we ended up having a chat for about half an hour, and he teed up an interview with Sheeds at Essendon, and again, I walked into the meeting thinking I don't really want to change, and we met at one of the supporters' houses just opposite Windy Hill. No one really knew about it, and I walked in, and again, fairly intimidating meeting such a champion and a great coach, and we sat down, and Kevin had a cup of tea, and I think I had a glass of water, and it was about 10 o'clock on maybe Monday or Tuesday, and we just had a bit of a chit chat about various things, and he brought a whiteboard up with all the names, and I think it was Paul Salmon, full forward, Stewart Loewe, I think Tim Watson might have been in the middle, and Kevin Walsh. It was just this phenomenal side, and I must admit, I went home and gave that some serious consideration. But at the same time, Trevor Barker was coaching our twos, and I walked in to the gym to do some gym work during pre-season, and I walked into Barks and had a chat for literally 2 or 3 minutes, and I just told him, I said, no, I'm not going to go, mate. I'm going to stay. I just really want to be remembered as a one-team club, and I really believe in the direction that the club's heading. That was the end of '95. '96 we won the night flag, and then '97 we played off in one, and shoulda, woulda, coulda. But I feel vindicated in my decision, and I have no regrets, and really am proud to be a one-team player.
And we've asked a few other former players on this show in the past. Kind of what is it about St Kilda, about Moorabbin, about Linton Street, about the club in general that is so special, that makes you want to stay, that makes you want to be that, one club player and be that hero to so many Saints fans? What is it about St Kilda that makes you want to stay?
It's the people. I've been subject, as Harves and Berkey and Danny and all these people, that the footy club had no culture. The footy club was a basket case. I'm not saying that we did everything right, but there was a hell of a lot of good people down there doing some amazing things, achieving some amazing things. Now, we never tasted the ultimate, but we worked bloody hard. We've never been a powerhouse footy club, but by God, once we get going, we can pack stadiums, and there's a real passion and feeling down there, as there is with most other clubs. But to me, to summarise why I stayed, it was simply the people, and the people make a footy club. And we're just custodians. We're just there for a small time. We do what we can whilst we're down there, and then we become supporters or followers after that. And to me, that was what I would have felt hard to leave. Blokes like Barks who had been so good to me as a junior, and then to come back to the footy club and to be working there at the time, and for me to walk out on that, it was just hard to do. Don't get me wrong, I was at that stage also, a professional athlete, who, we still had other jobs, but, we were putting a hell of a lot into it. And I slid away at the fact that I felt strongly that we were in a position to win a flag. And, that's our ultimate reason why we play. And, whilst we didn't quite get there in 97, again, I'll no regrets on staying at all.
Now, speaking of having other jobs and that sort of thing, you yourself actually still these days, I believe, a builder. You're obviously doing a bit of building during your playing day and that sort of stuff, but during that time or after retirement or anything like that, have you had any of the younger guys come in and doing any work for you or anything? Or and if so, is there any good stories that you might be able to drop with them?
Look, I had Gilbo down, who we signed off as a fully qualified halfway through last year. He's a ripper. I didn't know a lot about Sammy, but he just turned up day one and was prepared to roll his sleeves up and get in there amongst just all the crappy jobs, and it was a terrific learner. I'd a big Spider Everett early days when I very early days we were building a hell of a lot of carports and garages down around the Frankston way, and I never used to take a ladder. Spiders used to be able to just stand there and hold everything up. He liked to think he was good on the tools, but the big fella was a little bit rough around the edges. Didn't quite have the attention to detail, but geez, he was handy in the fact that we just didn't have that ladder at all. A couple of the other younger guys throughout Stevie Baker. I built a couple of units for him, and he was useless on the tools, so I basically just had to do everything for him. But no, it's been good fun. Obviously, Maxie Hutchton, who I now call one of my great mates, who's in his own right, just doing some amazing things building wise. Sort of followed in my footsteps and got his builder's license just as he finished. So, we catch up along with Rui every Monday, Wednesday, Friday down the bars and have a swim and do some weights. And Maxie and I talk shop all the time. And it's been a good industry to go into. Tough, hard, no doubt about that. And it's taken me a long time to sort of be Stewart Loewe, the guy who used to play football who's now the builder. No regrets and really, really enjoying it.
Just a couple before we let you go. On the Moorabbin journey, so you played your first game at Moorabbin against Sydney in round 9, 1986. The club was at a really low ebb at that stage, about to win a fourth wooden spoon in succession. Yeah. There were glimpses, 87 and 89. The club put some good footy together in patches, and obviously the crowds came back. But it was through the early 90s that we saw the joint really start to pump. And obviously when we played our last ever game there, which you were a part of in 1992 against Fitzroy, the club was on the verge of finals for the second year in a row. Can you sort of take us through your first impressions of Moorabbin and the way that grew and perhaps your experiences of the atmosphere? Because I think we've seen quite clearly in the last couple of weeks that it is very much home for the football club, the way it's been celebrated in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, look, I heard the club talking about the possibility of playing the Port Adelaide game at Moorabbin, and I just think that would be awesome if they could somehow manage to do that. I don't know whether they are going to with what's happening at the grandstand, but it would just be unbelievable.
Do you know any good builders?
Look, I've done a bit down there. When I was there, we did all the club rooms with the boys when we were struggling for a quid. A little bit different to what there is now, but no, I could point them in the right direction. It mightn't happen as quick as they'd like if I was in charge, but it would probably be cheaper than what they're paying for. But look, my first game against the Swans was Frankie Colgan and I debuted. There was not a blade of grass on the ground. I was always told that Ian Stewart watered it, and I've since had that 100% verified. We'd had a wet summer. Had a wet winter, but there seriously it was ankle deep mud from goal square to goal square all the way down. I was lucky enough to grab hold of a mark at about the 20-minute mark in the first quarter. I'd say 30 metres, but I think it was probably 25 metres out. And I just managed to land the distance to get my boot through the mud and kick a goal. The old days up in the social club, we go back afterwards, and yes, we had good fun in at the disco on a Saturday night. But all the coterie groups were up there. It was very intimate, very, very, very loyal. The animal enclosure was enormous. You could smell the barbecue on the outer. And you knew they just had your back all the way through. I remember one day we played Hawthorn. It was the late 80s. It might have been 90. And I used to live at Mount Eliza, and I pick halves up on the way through most weekends. But I decided to do this trip on my own. And for some reason, I decided to come the back way. I thought it might have been quicker just to duck up South Road. Well, the traffic on South Road was banked up from Warrigal Road all the way through to South Road. I made it just as the meeting started. It took me half an hour to get all the way through. I think there was 43,000. It was a lockout. It was enormous. And we managed to win that game too, courtesy of Russell Morris, who was playing for Hawthorn, who actually lost it for Hawthorn on that day, and then won us a game for St Kilda the following year against the Hawks. So he won us 2 games in a row. But no, great memories. Just it was just suburban footy, which I know we're not going to get back to. I think we all understand that, but I certainly think there is a slot for somehow getting a boutique stadium that could house 15 or so thousand people, and make that happen. Once or twice a year. I've no doubt it'll be huge.
It'll be absolutely massive. Stewie, as we let you go, I just recently during the week watched the reenactment match of 96 where you tore Collingwood apart. I think for any modern Saints fans that understand that you're a superstar but might not have seen the footage, that wouldn't be a bad game to start. I think you took 15 marks and kicked 7 or 8 in that particular game. It was one of many great games you played for the club. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing some memories. You've been a superstar, and good luck with everything in the building trade, and hopefully they will give you a call.
No worries at all, guys. No worries. Go Saints.